Well, hey there, everybody, and welcome to today's Grower Talks podcast. I'm Chris Beytes, editor-in-chief of Grower Talks, Green Profit, and the newsletter Acres Online. And today we're talking poinsettias, specifically the best poinsettias, best for specific purposes that growers and retailers are asking for, like timing, color, the market, the region you're growing in, the pot size, or the habit that you need. If you can request it from your poinsettia supplier, we're going to see if we can cover it and give you an idea for it. Now, I know a little bit about poinsettias, enough to be dangerous, probably. I even grew the things for 9 seasons from 1983 to 1991 in East Central Florida, where it's hot and the whiteflies are the size of bats. And I sold to florists and both garden centers that existed at this time. And my favorite red, and you guys are going to laugh or go, yeah, that was a good one. Good Beer V10 Amy. It was easier to grow than V14, which was at the time prone to bract necrosis. I even know who Amy was. Did you guys know this before I sent you the notes?
No, I did not.
You didn't? I thought for sure. Steve.
No, I did not.
Amy Carter, daughter of President Jimmy Carter. The variety was launched in 1977, and it got publicity in the New York or the Washington Post, I think, because of that, which made me think we need to do a better job naming poinsettias for publicity. But we'll talk about that. Anyway, this shows kind of how out of date I am with the V10 thing. But my guest experts who you've been looking at there, they are all poinsettia experts with a combined more than 101 years. Steve would only commit to more than 40. Gary's feeling old. Becca's the rookie of the group with just 20 years of experience between them. My guest experts are Rebecca Siemonsma. Am I pronouncing that right, Rebecca?
That's good enough.
Good enough. Rebecca from Express Seed, Gary Vollmer from Selecta One, and really the Ball Horticultural Company in general there, and Steve Rinehart of Rinehart Poinsettias and also Express Seed indirectly, right? Did I get that correct? So
yep.
Now I've asked all of these 3 companies, these experts, even though they represent a company that signs their paycheck, I've asked them to forget about that, to expunge that from their minds and to think of the best poinsettia on the market for a specific purpose, regardless of its breeder. Let's see if they can do that. First, quickly, a little bit of background about your poinsettia background. Rebecca, what's your poinsettia background?
Well, when I was in college, the very first crop I grew was a poinsettia crop, and I was lucky enough to have my poinsettias decorate the stage at South Dakota State University when I graduated. I didn't know at the time that would lead to a career in horticulture, or in poinsettias in particular. I got my earnest start in poinsettias with Ecke Ranch in 2004. Steve and I worked for Steve. He actually hired me. I worked for 10 years at Ecke in technical services, and after that did some time in poinsettia product management for both Beacon Camp and Dummen. And I've also been a sales rep in my home states of South Dakota for Griffin Greenhouse Supplies. So I've got well-rounded sales and product management experience in poinsettias. Most recently, I joined Express Seed as the director of In Bloom, which is our indoor potted flowering unit, and poinsettias are the core of that activity right now. So it's exciting.
That's great, and it's so great to hear the Ecke name. You know, if things were the way they should be, there should be an Ecke representative on the panel. But in a way, I guess we've got 2 of them.
2.
We'll get to the second one in a minute. First, Gary, 40 years in poinsettia, 41 years in poinsettia. Yeah. You say, tell me about that briefly.
Well, first exposure was high school job, exposed at a greenhouse that was growing in. I wasn't allowed to touch them. I was sweeping floors and disc bedding mums, but I was exposed, was intrigued. But my first real growing experience, 1983 in Florida. And like you, V10 Amy was really a revolutionary variety for growers in Florida because it wasn't susceptible to heat delay, and allowed us to actually have varieties that timed. And it was a good lesson about the power of genetics, and specifically in the poinsettia.
Mhm.
So I did that for a while, worked for Natural Beauty where I grew poinsettias for Disney, grew lots and lots of stock on the 4-star, grew high-end poinsettias for some retailers in the Detroit area and malls and things like that. Then on to Smith Gardens where we were primary producer for Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart, Fred Meyer's, and other grocery outlets.
And that's on the Pacific Northwest.
Pacific Northwest, yeah. So I've got
Florida,
some
Michigan,
Michigan, Pacific Northwest,
Washington.
yeah. And then in 2010, I took the job as a product manager and technical manager on the ball flower plant project, and primarily leading a lot of Selecta programs, and then evolved to just managing Selecta. Poinsettia being the highest technical demand product that I worked with. And now I'm back to doing both ball flower plant and Selecta. So
That's the thing about poinsettias. Nobody will ever say, I got it figured out. Thanks.
no,
Thanks, Gary. You don't have to pop by this year. Steve, how about you?
Yeah, well,
morbid guy.
in my 40 plus years, my first crop of poinsettias was working side by side of a guy named Sparky at Krugermatic's greenhouse in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah.
After that, I went out west to the Ecke Ranch and focused on a lot of jobs in production, then grew to add on research, and then grew into operations. So production, research, operations. My first job might be interesting at the ranch. At that time, we were growing outdoor stock, and we didn't have all the offshore production that they ultimately acquired. And so my first job was managing field stock in Encinitas. So I quickly moved.
Pastures out in between the white fences at the ranch, right?
Yeah. So we actually had some outdoor stock, but quickly moved into managing the propagation, and then a big stint in offshore. I lived in Mexico, brought up the Mexico operation, and then when Guatemala came online, managed Guatemala and the production there as well. So I've had a bit of national experience and then also international. So
and you're the only bona fide breeder in the group.
Yeah.
You're making your own varieties now, Rinehart poinsettias.
Yeah, having some success there and actually throwing pollen around and breeding poinsettias. So
Is that all it takes?
Happy to
Come on, Gary, get with it up there.
Yeah.
All right, and Gary, you're broadcasting from where today? We'd like to know that.
I'm broadcasting from my home office in Bellingham, Washington.
Bellingham, okay, up near Smith Gardens. Rebecca, South Dakota?
South Dakota.
There you go. And Steve?
Famous Encinitas, California.
Right, see, the home of poinsettias, and I'm holding down the Ball Publishing Orlando offices today. So, all right, you guys ready? Because I'm going to fire these at you pretty quickly. Quick answers right off the top of your head from your gut, and then if we need to go into more detail, we will. Gary, you got a question? Point?
Yeah. Who goes first? I mean, this is like a game.
Yeah.
You can answer. I want to know what the rotation is or something.
Let's see. We'll kind of keep it in the same order we've been going. Rebecca, Gary, Steve.
That's a lot of pressure.
I guess it is, or maybe we'll mix it up just a little bit here. Let's see where it goes. See what happens. First, the best poinsettia to have the very first plants at retail. Week 44, 45, like November 1st.
Yeah, you're really pushing it early, number one there, Chris. But I know that Gary's going to talk a little bit about Christmas Magic, and I did see Christmas Magic this year in the West Coast, and it's early. I think Gary would probably agree. Traditionally, we've seen Orion in that category, or early Orion is another one, especially if you go south. In the Dummen camp, probably Advent even comes to mention. So not to steal everyone's thunder, but those are some early candidates. And I guess I should throw in my own Ranch Red just to cause a little stir there as well. So.
All right, November 1st, Ranch Red with those giant
Yes.
Poinsettia, right? All right, Rebecca.
So I'm going old school with Advent. Reliably, that's the earliest in color. And Dummen also has a new one called Rapid Red that's showing a lot of promise.
All right, Gary. November 1st, poinsettia.
Yeah, historically Advent without question, and the way Advent has been utilized with that earliness and playing games with growth regulators as a landscape poinsettia. It's kind of found a really unique niche as a landscape poinsettia. So that's got to carry a lot of historical. Okay. Right now in our, in my world, the one that we're comfortable hitting 45 all day is Christmas Magic. And then the other, which was really important, it took us years to breed, was the Early Elegance family. And we're recognizing this crazy demand. The question I have for the world is, how early is too early? Are we getting to that equation that the retailers are going right from, the clearance Halloween candy directly to Christmas displays and expecting poinsettias in the stores the last week of October? And that seems to be becoming almost normal.
Well, that's a whole other podcast. Hold that thought. There's the next
we're trying to find that orange. We're trying to find that orange that works in that time period and carry it into Halloween. But I don't know how big that market is, but it'd be interesting to have the plant.
All right. What about next one up for an autumn or a Thanksgiving poinsettia? Doesn't have to be a red. Can be a red, but it doesn't have to be a red.
Who's going? Are you telling us?
Gary.
Oh, me. Okay. Yeah. All right. So to me, yeah, there's to Steve's point, the concept of I think as an industry, we've tried to throw every possible floral concept at Halloween, and we've done it with pansies and mums and you name it, and it's never stuck until now. So this is a shout out to Day of the Dead. Holy cow! You want to make money in the fall? Grow some marigolds. That's a wonderful thing, and I think it's a great thing that we've seen. And I think that's going to take away some of the thunder for the early decorating. But when it comes to Thanksgiving, historically, there is some some very interesting novelty varieties out on the market, and Autumn Leaves is a spectacular color, challenging variety to produce. But the reality is the uniqueness of that color and the retail appeal of that color makes it one that the growers are figuring out how to produce. And it's a gorgeous thing. And we've come at it with oranges and peaches and other types of colors that yellows, etc., that are fall colors. But the only one that to me has really resonated is that really decorator color. And again, you see that as it's positioned through retail programs is Autumn Leaves.
Autumn Leaves. All right, Steve?
I completely agree with Gary. Autumn Leaves was a breakthrough. Yeah. I think it's a good one. You can put in, maybe a red glitter or some of the Superba varieties. But the standout is Autumn Leaves for me as well.
All right, Rebecca?
Yeah, it's Autumn Leaves for me too, because while we've got some oranges that time early now, sometimes under retail lights, the consumer doesn't know if it's a shade of red or, is it supposed to be an autumnal color? And to me, Autumn Leaves is just the perfect complement to a lot of that Thanksgiving decor.
All right.
It's one of the categories where I get said no to a lot. Can you try this? No. We have this. We're fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Next big timing, and one of the biggest now is, and Rebecca said she hates the term Black Friday, but I don't.
Hate
it. But it's sort of it used to be self-explanatory, except Black Friday lasts all November now. But we sort of think of it as the day after Thanksgiving. Mass market. What's the best mass market, big box, ad flyer poinsettia? Rebecca.
I had 3 on my list. First one would be Astro from Beacon Camp. You're looking for a variety that, or Ferrara or Mirage. Those are my 3. You look for varieties that show early bract color and late Cyathea expression, so you get nice long shelf life. You want kind of a moderate sized bract so that it sleeves well. You want it to work well in all regions. You want to be able to, slow it down under, if you have to delay. So you just want it to be nice and versatile, and grown at high density. That's also really important, and maybe a shortened production schedule too, just because we know the margins aren't great in that mass market promotion segment.
Ticks a lot of boxes. Steve?
Yep.
I went in a little different direction, and I'd like for the market to differentiate that poinsettia from the rest of the market and not just fold it in. And so what I went was some of the compact ones like Kayla and Pepite that are could be considered high density, heavy branchers, and a more compact habit, giving it a different look at retail.
So you don't sort of water down those ad flyer poinsettias with your higher quality, big bract poinsettias. In other words, I got you, Gary.
It's it.
For us, the one that has evolved into this role and it's our top selling variety is Christmas Eve. The reason being Christmas Eve has some very interesting production focused attributes. It is very fast to root. It is 18 days to be fully rooted, so it works really good in direct stick situations. It also allows you to run really quick through liner production. It's also rapid to grow after rooting and elongates itself rapidly and can easily be manipulated. So perfect for mowing. So when you have a guy that wants, a grower that's growing mass market, they want to be able to mechanically pinch. And so this variety presents itself with a smaller leaf and a good vertically positioned meristem, ideal for mowing. Having that fast rooting and easy mowing and consistent mowing, you get high yield. It's a good, strong root system. It's a very narrow upright plant, and it allows it to be grown at much higher density in both 1 quart and the 6-inch promo.
All right, we're going to get into
not a fan of the promo, but you got to work what you got to work, and the idea is what we're focused is cost and yield. Can we reduce gross costs and increase their yield? That's simple math. It's not the most beautiful stuff. It's the most cost-effective stuff.
I don't see any growers saying no to these market demands. You just got to deliver. We're going to get into the core season, maybe week 48, 49 in a second. But how about late season, December 15 to 24? Best variety. Rebecca.
Oh, I'm a fan of Aurora. I like the way that Aurora finishes under, different light conditions. Some of those like super late ones, the 9 and 9.5 week response time varieties just get too late depending on environmental conditions and low light. But Aurora's got a nice kind of moderate to late finish, and it's just a really great looking plant. So Aurora works in all container sizes too.
Okay, Gary.
Yeah, I agree. Aurora is our versatile late variety for sure. It's really good. It's one of these kind of chameleons in high light, low humidity situations. It's quite early, 47, but in upper regions, it really comes into its real, high quality end 48, 49, which is good. We also have one that's it's a church special. And I mean, we don't sell a lot of them, but it's all for truly, we call it the Advent season, where basically, if you look at the Advent season of poinsettias, the traditional season starts on December 15th. And so we want something that's going to look good from December 15th all the way through the Advent, which is middle of January. And so we have a variety that we want to sell out. It's called Christmas Tradition. It's our latest, and it is wicked late.
Christmas Tradition.
Yeah, it's a pretty variety. It's wide. It's not a modern variety. It doesn't have a good modern architecture. It has a big, pretty bract, and it's so late that you have to grow it very specifically to work. But it is, like I said, designed for week 50 and later. And really designed for the church.
All right, Steve.
Well, I'll start off by saying I think there should be more late season poinsettias grown. A lot of times we'll use the mid season and just stretch it. And I think giving the late market a fresh poinsettia is sometimes overlooked, number one. But I get the choices of Aurora. I agree. But I'd also throw in Rojo from my own group and maybe Mars. But Rojo, walking through the Lucas trials last year and seeing the dark leaf and the power that can be delivered by the late season, I'd give Rojo a shout as well.
All right, good. Now let's talk about the main season crops. Week, 47, 48, 49, I guess thereabouts. After Thanksgiving through early December. But let's talk it regionally, because I think that's what correct me if I'm wrong. That's kind of the biggest consideration is where are you? So let's talk about best core red for the North, however we classify North. South Dakota, New York,
Perhaps.
Let's see, Minneapolis. Is that far north? Tell me, Rebecca. Start with you again.
Oh, okay. So for me in the north, Mirage is a great variety. It finishes really well under low light. It's got good cyathea retention and production, really, because that's one and side shoot production. A lot of times varieties struggle under that low light to get enough carbohydrate storage to produce those cyathea, and then your lower laterals are affected under low light. So Mirage for me is a great one.
All right, Steve.
Well, I don't want to take all of Gary's thunder, but there's a lot of beauty being grown in the north. So you got to have beauty in there somewhere.
That's Christmas.
But also, I've seen a lot of robin grown. So I'd say robin, mirage, beauty.
All right, Gary.
For us, beauty is a great variety, but I was going to put that one on a different region because of the heat. It's tolerant to heat. What we find is Mirage is been sort of the target of what we've been trying to emulate as far as quality, timing, density, habit, etc. So it's kind of like a Mirage-esque battle. We've been with Cheer, we've been, originally with Day, but now we're working with a variety called Christmas Bells here in North America. It's working really well. It's known in Europe as Christmas Universe, and it has risen very quickly in 3 years to the top seller for Selecta in Europe. Okay. So its performance is really good. It's a different look, but it has that sort of producibility, density, etc., temperatures, acceptance that Mirage has. So it's kind of versatile like Mirage, a little bit different look. And that's what I feel like is more of our future in the north.
All right.
And Chris, I would also add that, in the north, we need a early expanding bract. It really helps out with the earliness, even though the cyathea might not be mature, we can at least get that bract out early. So I would add that should be in the decision making.
I think that the whole concept of cell window is what we have to really look at is what is the cell window of a variety? When can you cheat it? And how long before you get to the point of pollen? Because at pollen, then you start to have breakdown. But what's your cell window from saleable color to pollen? That really extends a variety's performance. And I think that's something that all the breeding companies are trying to create in this, is that more versatility that also translates beautifully into shelf life.
All right, but sum up again which varieties we all picked. Rebecca, sum up for us which ones we picked for the north.
Mirage.
And Gary? One variety.
Bell's Mirage.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, I can definitely go with Mirage as well. So I'm not going to.
All right, I'm going to do that because we get into such discussion, people might forget. Wait, which one was that? So, southern for the South, not deep South necessarily, but just broad, general, mid-South to South. What do you like, Gary?
Christmas Beauty is our steady 80 and works throughout what I would call the mid-South, Carolinas, Texas, southern parts of California. So Beauty it's our workhorse. And definitely our top seller in the southern.
All right. Steve?
area.
Well, Freedom has been the old workhorse. It's not gone yet. So
no, it's not gone yet at all.
Yeah, I know. A lot of people still.
At some point too. So Freedom,
what's that?
We're going to talk about old names at some point here near the end. So stick
and poinsettias that live the entire patent life. That's kind of interesting that we have plants that do that.
Is that your pick, Freedom?
Yeah, I'd pick Freedom.
All right, Rebecca?
Yeah, for me, actually Freedom, Early Orion, those are some varieties that have been the standard in the South for a long time. And And oftentimes when you go in and talk to growers in the South, mid-South to the deep South about new varieties, they are comfortable with what they know and what works. And, it's still Orion and Freedom. Though I would say there's some Latzery genetics coming that are, looking very promising in the South also. So, but stick with what you know if it works for you. So.
All right. Now, I don't know if out west, say a desert climate, drier, more Mediterranean climate makes a difference versus what you see in the east.
Big time.
Does it?
Big
okay.
time.
So what would you recommend for a grower in California, Phoenix, Denver?
The reality, and if you're in the high light, low humidity world of the West and the desert West, pick whatever you want. They all work in those climates. To me, the thing that I would say, the comment I would say is recognize that in the warm but low humidity conditions, you don't see heat delay issues, quite the opposite. You see rapid onset. And we find things like in Colorado, Utah, Central California to be like 7 days earlier than anywhere else in North America. And that's pretty much consistent across most genetics. There are some that time normally. But the thing is a mid-season variety is a late season variety. And so for us, that mid-season variety is Christmas Aurora. It dominates the desert and the West Coast for that.
All right. Rebecca?
Gosh, for the West, I was either going to say Cheer or Aurora. So those would be my choices. And I guess the comment I would make there too, you do have to be careful about dry conditions when you're pinching. And some of the newer, some of the really strong V-shaped architecture varieties on the market now, like Prestige, tend to show some branching issues when it's hot and dry. So it's kind of a matter of finding that variety that will take that heat and still, produces enough lower laterals and doesn't have negative branching effects in the heat. But for me, Aurora, Cheer, those are two that do really well.
Right.
Yeah, I think one of the things, just to comment on that, is we do a lot of our selection work in Italy. Italy is not really south. I mean, where we select is literally Chicago. But what we can do is we can emulate more of that kind of growing condition with lower humidities and let the temperatures run up a little bit in the greenhouses, and we get a better feel. We've been working on that for a while. And I think your comment about some of the Lasserie varieties coming to bear fruit in southern production, I think that's very true. Because Lasserie is literally down the street from where we are.
And Steve, you're in that paradise. You're in that paradise climate, San Diego County. What's a good variety for that climate?
I mean, Prestige is still out there, good numbers, still people growing it. I also mentioned that there's more and more beauty even. I don't know, Gary, how you feel about beauty on the West, but I traveled with one of the major growers here in the West last year. Beauty is one of the anchor varieties they're using. So
absolutely, beauty. The beauty of beauty is the versatility of beauty, and it's also a family. Now, the family is not the greatest family, but the versatility of beauty. And when you have a grower that breaches numerous climates in different regions, and they want to have continuity in their genetics, beauty is something they can make work in multiple locations. And so, therefore, that reliability across different regions allows us to work with some of these growers that have contractors in different areas or have different production locations. So that's why I think beauty wins that game, because it works everywhere.
You do see some Ferrara pop up as well as another variety. I get that variety totally. And you see Mirage. So there's a lot of choice in the West, as I think the group alluded to. You got choice in the West.
That's the place to be.
What I can tell you, what we see in the West, because it's really dominated by some larger growers, it's about matching the genetic to the specific spec they're trying to produce. A lot of West Coast production is large container production, Costco production, big.
So you're choosing your variety for something other than it happens to grow well in this temperature.
It all works well in this climate, which is the best fit for whatever need you're trying to achieve. That's kind of my point. Right. You can make pretty much anything work in those conditions. You really want to match it to the need.
And maybe I struggled growing in Central Florida, but what about Miami? What do you pick for a grower?
I love it.
I love it.
I've been breeding for 10 years, and in that 10 years, concentrating on heat. And to me, the heat equation equals Miami, because that is a region where few varieties really work. And if you're going to target to try to get the most heat performing variety, it's there. So I had a good experience this last year with Ranch Red. Unbelievable. It's setting the new standard, I think, for how early you can go. And I don't know if it's not heat delaying, but it's delaying very little. And there's only a few other varieties that really hit that early target. So
Gary?
My choice is Ranch Red.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say Ranch was surprising. This was an anomalous year, and I would argue that, South Florida was, Miami was kind of rough. Naples was a bit worse, but East Texas was hell on earth. And parts of East Texas, because the heat dome continued to build, we saw what I would say is heat beyond any variety's ability to perform well. But in those situations, some performed more consistently. It was a weird situation this year because we weren't looking at which ones were heat delaying. We were just trying to figure out which ones were going to survive. And then the heat delay was your secondary problem. The first one was, can I get these things to grow and finish? And we saw all kinds of issues with that. And so a lot of what I would consider traditional heat living varieties found their upper limits. Yeah. So to me,
what rose to the top though in all that?
So in our world for mid-season, Christmas Bee, the other one, Christmas Feelings, it struggles early in the heat. It shows some heat stress, but it always recovers and finishes like a rock star. It's not the most gorgeous variety, but it is steady Eddie. On the early side, Christmas Magic works, but it's so bloody early that it's problematic. So you need to give it time and use growth regulators to time it. But honestly, there is no magic variety in the heat dome of East Texas. And I saw growers that had pretty much everything in their trials.
And yet the things are from Mexico.
Would have risen up to where I would say, wow, that one really rocked the heat.
The mountains of Mexico, Chris.
Oh, the mountains of Mexico. Oh, see,
the mountains of Mexico.
3,000 feet where it's nice and cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. And bright and the lower humidity. All right, Rebecca, what's your favorite?
It's the humidity. So, the humidity is the killer. That's what's killing us. Is the humidity.
For me, when we talk about Miami, we got to talk about bacterial resistance and finishing outdoors too, because not all varieties finish nice under saran or shade cloth type scenario. And bacterial leaf spot is in the landscape. And so for me, Ranch Red this year, I was just amazed at how the bright color grown outdoors and how clean the foliage was. Now, this grower I saw it at is a fantastic poinsettia grower outdoors. However, I saw other varieties that normally we would consider resistant to bacterial leaf spotting and a good red color. And I saw it from, halfway across the property. So no heat delay and super impressed with just the aesthetics.
All right.
Yeah, agreed. And I agree with your point, resistance to or at least tolerance to bacteria. Pick your terminology, resistance to bacterial leaf spot. Usually I think it's the wax, but whatever it is, it prevents, that's a big issue because literally, South Florida, Hawaii, poinsettias are grown either directly out in the sun or just under saran. There's no greenhouses involved, so they're exposed to the elements. And
my greenhouses just add heat and delay. Hey, okay, let's go the other direction, even above Rebecca in South Dakota. Let's go to Fairbanks. I want to grow poinsettias in Fairbanks. What do I grow, Rebecca?
I don't know if it is that much far north of South Dakota, is it? If we really get into latitude.
180 miles south of the Arctic Circle.
Okay, well, for me, again, it's the things that do well in the west in Fairbanks. So, I would choose things like Mirage, Aurora. For me, we think about, for me, it's a really versatile growing environment in Fairbanks, right? Long days, high light, moderate climate, so for me, there's lots of choices, and it's about picking the one that works best for your market needs.
Steve?
Well, interesting. I was chosen at one point in my life to do a grower call in Alaska. And it was a unique experience for me because toward the finishing time period, you really have no light.
Yeah.
I mean, and so some of those growers even go to Seattle, try to pull up poinsettias by truck. But there's a few brave souls there. And probably at that time, I think early freedom and that sort of thing was grown. And it did okay. But you really lose light, and it's becomes a real challenge in that territory.
Yeah, you go from.
I assume if you're doing it, you have lights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell
Any
you.
experience with that as a Bellingham grower?
Yeah, I would tell you. Yeah, not the ideal situation. Shipping poinsettias in a truck across the Alcan.
Yeah.
150 miles of washboard, not particularly good for back bruising. But yeah, do have experience at one point even putting them on a 747 and trying to fly them up. So there is no great solution to poinsettia in Alaska. Growing in Alaska is very viable. And yeah, Rebecca, I think the guys that do it, pretty much everybody up there that's trying to do year-round type of greenhouse work has lights. It's just kind of imperative unless you're just going to do late bedding crash. So they are grown with lights. What we find is don't have a lot of market. We do have a little bit in Alaska, not the Fairbanks, but in Anchorage. But I will tell you that's cheer. But the one that we see working well for Selecta in Finland, Norway, it's Christmas Bells, Christmas Universe. It's working really good, way up there. And you want to go north, go to Finland. That's north.
Oh, there you go.
And they actually have a market. So it's north, and they actually grow a significant amount of poinsettias up. And Scandinavia is a strong marketplace. It really is. It's amazing.
Yeah, all those little minis.
Yes, lots of minis, 4-inch.
Well, speaking of which, let's switch on to container and or habit, and let's keep them moving. Not too much description, just a variety names and a little bit of why. Minis. Speaking of minis, 2-inch, tiny stuff. What do you like? Rebecca, let's start with you.
Oh, there's a new series from Dummen called Freya. Actually, they use Freya in Europe, but it's really great for minis. It's got that cute little habit, cute little bracts, lots of colors to choose from. So for me, Freya.
All right, Gary?
And it's got a nice Nordic name.
Our top mid-season is Christmas Beauty. We also use Christmas Glory, low vigor variety. Colors in it is great, but what we've seen a lot of uptick on is by creating mini cutting is using Christmas Eve. That density, that smaller bract is real conducive to it. And it's also a clean stem. So you want a variety that doesn't create this underbranching they call kindle. That can make botrytis. So you want a clean stem variety with the modest size bract. As long as you make a mini cutting, a lot works.
All right. And Steve?
I see a lot of freedom still around in Europe. They seem to discover freedom later than the U.S., but you still see it. I see beauty as well. So I think there's some choice there. With freedom, you can dip that temperature late in the season, hold it really well. And so, it's for cold grow. I think it's a good choice as well.
All right, we'll get into that too. Let's go the other direction. I want to grow some trees. What's going to make the best straight up 3 or 4 foot tall poinsettia tree? Steve.
Oh man, I'm going to pass right now. I got to think. Yeah.
All right,
think
Rebecca.
Gosh, I like it's some of that like old school looking stuff, like classic Jubilee. Serena maybe from Latzery, because you want a variety that isn't susceptible to splitting too, and you want like a big cascading bract, and so kind of some of the old school stuff still for me.
And you're starting these back at Mother's Day probably too, right?
Yeah, like the middle of May. A triple pinch tree is like May 15th.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Gary?
Well, in that arena of the traditional tree, I would agree. One I would see the most of for sure. You see a lot of Jubilee historically, but Prestige still becomes, I would say, the number one used for a core red tree. But that is your core 4.5 foot tree market. What we're seeing evolving is the desire to make a smaller tree. And, depending on who you're talking to, it's anywhere between 24 and 36 inches. And in that arena, now you shift your gears from that big bracted, big upright, vigorous guy like a Prestige. And then what we've landed on for us, we've developed this market in Ontario with a couple of growers, and beauty has been our preferred, and others of the concept of a medium vigor, less vigorous variety to make a smaller tree is really the thing. And the idea is trying to get something, the best way to describe it is the grower, the owner of a grower that was arguing why they had to reduce the size of the tree, and said, look, if I can't fit it in the back of my SUV to take it home, it's too big. And
that is the point. You got to deliver those 4-footers. So a 2-foot tree might be better.
So the idea was, I want something that, I mean, if I can't even take my trees home to decorate my house, and I grew them, I need a smaller tree. And so I think there's opportunity because of shipping density. You get way more plants per rack. You get way more, 2 layers on a rack. You get multiple plants on a shelf. You start to become economical. Trees are done as a favor for retailers, but it's not a profit center for growers.
Put them in terracotta so they don't tip over, though. That's what I like.
It's really hard from I was just going to say, it's really hard from a stock production standpoint to supply those early cuttings. It's the worst.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see. Rebecca, you used the term presidential tub.
Yeah.
Is that something special, or is that just a giant poinsettia?
That's an Ecke term, actually, presidential tub. And it's really just like, I don't even know what container size they were, if they were 12-inch or 14-inch, but they're grown on the same schedule as trees, but just multiple pinches. And it's just a really large, for like shopping mall decoration and things like that. So,
what came out of Ellison's in Texas?
Yes, they were gorgeous.
That I think went to the White House. Maybe that's where they went from.
Yeah, that was a PJ Ellison special. That's right.
Yeah. Now, do you know what those were, Steve?
Oh gosh,
they were probably Freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah,
some of the biggest poinsettias ever, like 6 foot, 8 foot tall.
Yep.
Or something.
Yeah.
All right. So your variety, Rebecca?
6 foot might be a little big.
For me now, there's some new vigorous stuff like Imperial or Toro or something like that has some really good vigor. Just some of the newer genetics that have good vigor that work well in those larger containers. So, all
right, Steve, big 12, 14-inch presidential pot. What would you grow?
I pick Ranch Red in a heartbeat. I mean, not everyone has seen it. We saw it last year against Ferrara, actually, a little bit. Ferrara has been used as well in that size in the past. But I would pick Ranch Red in a heartbeat.
All right, that'd be pretty. Gary?
For us, the when we talk about that pot size, we really differentiate between the Costco 10-inch, 24/26-inch, and then leaping up to a 30-inch tall poinsettias. And at that point, to get to a 30-inch, you really have to start recognizing the splitting factor.
Yeah.
And so you narrow the field a little bit. But I think for us, the one of the high sellers is called Christmas Wish or Christmas Cheer for the mid-season. It's got the right rack presentation and a big show. Still requires a ring. New product for us that is demonstrating the possibility of not needing a ring is called Christmas Candle. Very, very strong stemmed and very, very one of our steepest uprights. It's also early to color, late to flower, so it checks some boxes, but it's a vigorous beast.
All right.
And only suited for the big stuff. And
right.
So we did vet it for splitting. But I will tell you, one of the most interesting things you talk about in poinsettias, I've had the pleasure of through my travels and looking at trials in Italy, is to work with the family business that is the official poinsettia growers of the Vatican. And you go and you walk that place and you see the plants that he's growing for the Pope's residence and the plants for the basilicus and all that. It's pretty amazing. And they have big combos that stand about 5 feet tall.
Presidential poinsettia is one thing, but a papal poinsettia.
It's really good. Whoa! Super nice family. Just really good quality growers, obviously. But
all right. We want to see photos of that. Here's an old-fashioned one. Is anybody doing straight ups?
They should.
Marvin Miller wants to know.
Love them.
Dr. Marvin Miller. Rebecca, what would you grow if you were going to do a pot of traditional straight ups?
Well, for me, it's still classic red and white. It's like that's old school too, but that's kind of like when that concept really became a thing, that was the variety that we developed the production techniques for. It just was the look, everything, 4 plants in a 8-inch square. But today, more modern genetics, I like the look of Superba. I think Superba makes you want a variety that's splitting is always a factor, right? Because we're not pinching. You want, kind of big showy bracts, big Saithia. So there's lots to choose from. Low production of Kindles, as Gary mentioned, that's another one because we don't want that side shoot look. And so if I had to pick today, it would be Superba.
All right, Steve, you're probably growing some straight ups.
I like growing a good 9 bloom, but also the 9 bloom plant, I like it to be a variety that can do 7s, 5s, 3s as well. I had this experience of taking one of those 9 blooms down to a photographer. I was doing some stuff for Rinehart Poinsettias, some photography, and he called my 9 bloom of Legacy epic. He had never seen a poinsettia like that in his life. He said, "This is epic." So I let him have it, and he loved it, absolutely loved it. So my choice is Legacy.
Legacy, and then you're going to breed a new one called Epic, no doubt, coming up.
Yeah, right.
Well, everybody's like to write that name down. Gary,
I'm the one who has to write it down.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting look. It's a retro look. I remember as a kid in the greenhouse doing straight ups because it was pre phytoplasma. It was pre Heg, and that was how you did it. You did straight ups, and we were doing 4 and a 6 as a floral 6. And the trick was in that day, and I will argue instead of trying to pick a variety is. There's 2 ways to skin this cat. You can go with a really big bracted variety and wow them with a huge bract and maybe 4 cuttings, or you go in with just a blitz of the show. One of the prettiest things I saw was a work, and there were several varieties that were used in this. In our world, it was done with Christmas Aurora, but there was Prestige and others in this as well, which was a 5 bloom 10-inch grown to 28 inches tall.
Hallelujah.
I mean, you talk about wow. It was 5 massive ass bracts. I mean, just huge. And it was fun, is what it was. But retailers aren't nibbling yet. We need to find a market for it. But I think it's there. And we're in the poinsettia cutting business. I love the idea of putting multiple cuttings per pot. Come on,
get people excited about the 6-inch by showing them what the possibility is.
But I do think there's possibilities. I think there's lots of opportunities for unpinched poinsettias, combo food, etc. A lot of work can be done.
There you go. All right. How about for cut poinsettias, cut flowers?
Oh yeah.
Is there an opportunity? And which variety would you grow, Steve? You're into it.
Oh yeah. I'd bring back the retro, and it's Renaissance without a doubt. And I love that plant. You talk about a long-lasting plant. I mean, in California, of course, we can put the Renaissance big show even in a tub on the doorstep and let it last for 4 months. But as a cut, I think, we really tried that opportunity in my past. We tried to do it the traditional way of cutting, shipping, and all that. I think I would totally do it different now and actually grow large pots that are cut at retail on the spot, put the service into the vase, and I would be all over that. I think that's the way to do it, and it's Renaissance. Bring back Renaissance.
All right. Gary?
I would say in our world, Valentine, Winter Rose, those types. We've done some work with just vase tests, and their shelf life is very good. The issue really is the yield you can produce. Your cost per stem is going to put this above most things. It's going to be putting it up there with an orchid spray or something like that is a very high value stem. So I love the concept, and we talk about it regularly, annually. when I'm overseas with the breeder, and we circle back to the fact that we can't get anybody to bite on the cost of production.
All right. How about you, Rebecca?
Jester. Jester was such a cool cut flower. Yeah, Jester, and any poinsettia will work, but Jester just had kind of a special, unique look to it. And I think, really there's a lot of resurgence now with domestic grown cut flowers, and also those, so there's a place for our domestic production, but also there's a lot of garden centers still that have a flower shop connected to them, and they have a greenhouse out in the back, and they're growing their own cut flowers. And it's not going to be a huge market, but there is interest, and, any variety will work, but Jester's cool.
Okay. Chris, just to add, Chris, when I started at Ecke, we would ship poinsettias up to the New Year's parade, right? Yeah. Up in Pasadena. And that was all a variety called St. Louis, if you recall that. And it was grown outdoors. We could cut with a bandsaw, make the stems even, and take buckets up. So, it did exist at one point. Yeah. I'll say that.
Do you burn the end with a cigarette lighter or some kind of a flame? Is that?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. But you can use, bleach in a bucket. It's what we did.
All right, cool. Let's bring that one back. All right, we got to keep moving fast here. Markets. Best poinsettias. Best red poinsettia for an independent garden center. That's probably pretty broad. We probably mentioned them all already. Is there such a thing? One poinsettia for independents.
I'll go. So, the IGCs are generally looking for a way to differentiate between the mass market, retail stores. So they want something a little bit more upscale looking. For me, there's a new one from Latzery called Maestro that's really beautiful. It's a core mid-season variety. It's got that just really big kind of florist quality look, which we talk about a little bit later too, but it's Maestro for me.
All right. Steve?
I bring on the big Cyathea and Ranch Red Legacy. It's for me. Yeah.
Traditional big Cyathea.
Yeah.
Right. Gary?
Ecke look. It's the Ecke.
Yeah.
Yeah. Come on, it is. It's that bloodline that does it.
Yeah, right. Gary,
I would agree with that.
Red for IBC.
That's a great one. The one we sell the most of because it when grown well, it's almost perfect. Is Christmas Noel, and that's been positioned by Selecta in Europe. We follow that positioning in North America, and it does work really well in that situation. It gives you a bit of a unique look, and it allows you to differentiate versus what's in the mass market.
All right.
But I agree with Steve. Traditional big Cyathea makes that elegant look.
All right, Gary, keep going, and your best for the mass market.
Whew. That's a loaded question because you got to tell me when, dude. I mean, is it 45 mass market, 46, 47, 48, 49?
If you could only so let's go into because if you could only grow one to meet all purposes, I'm actually jumping ahead.
If I was going to grow one poinsettia that had to work everywhere for everybody and would satisfy a good mass market poinsettia, it'd be Christmas Beauty. It's the most universal across all regions. You can do it in Edmonton. You can do it in Homestead. So
Christmas Beauty.
I'll call Christmas Beauty as my choice, only based on the fact that you didn't give me the chance to pick a region or a date.
We already talked about those, though. So. All right, Rebecca.
Yeah, I would say probably Christmas Beauty too, just because it works everywhere. It's a little bit more on the naturally compact side, so you can reduce your PGR inputs and just overall input costs. So probably Beauty for me.
All right. Rebecca, keep going with the best poinsettia for the pickiest retail florist on the planet.
Yeah, so that's one called Fabulous from Dummen. That's a really beautiful, that florist type market again. It's just like the IGCs. They want cascading bracts. They want the right kind of bluish undertone red color. That's generally what they like for that market. Big Cyathea. And so it would be Fabulous for me.
Something you can sell a 7-inch pot for $125.
Yep.
Right. Steve?
I'd still stay with the large Cyathea, florist grade. I'd have the same choices of Ranch Red and Legacy.
All right. Gary?
Yeah, I'm going to stick on the same kind of positioning is getting the large Cyathea types and Noel, but the one, if you're talking about a florist in a larger pot, Christmas Wish sizes up, has a big bracket, it has a big Cyathea as well. So to me, Christmas Wish has that traditional look. It's probably our most traditional Cyathea bracket.
All right, and this
yeah.
and this may be related. Churches and fundraisers. More and more growers putting a lot of their wintertime effort into those markets. What would you pick, Steve?
I think there's a lot of choices actually, but Mirage isn't a bad choice either in that arena. But I think a lot of prestige is still grown in that arena as well. It's typically a little bit later in the case of churches, fundraisers earlier, so depend on timing as well there. So,
okay.
But anyways,
Rebecca.
I like Grande Italia for the church market. It's a big, like for an 8-inch church market or large 6-inch like specimen type. It's and the color looks good. You have to think about at that point, you have to think about the red under retail lights and then in like the church setting too. And for me, that variety looks really nice in that market.
Yeah, and these customers only buy from us once a year, and you want them to come back next year. If you're so you can't impress them. We're disappointed with the poinsettia and try to win them back with your bedding plants. So Gary, what's your best Christmas or fundraiser or church or fundraiser poinsettia?
Just to throw the reference back to the Vatican, Grand Italia and Aurora are the two that they grow for the Vatican. Grand Italia stands as the choice. And the reason both of those are grown is because there's not a lot of light in the basilicas between services. There is a little bit of light, but it's light shining through stained glass windows. They don't light it much. So when you're in that dark settings, that's where Grand Italia shines, and it holds that color. That's a good one for that niche.
Okay.
We have one that we're bringing. It's too young for me to scream it's going to rock beautifully, but it's a variety we just launched, Christmas Song, and it was bred specifically to achieve that kind of color retention, dark red, good strong color retention through low light and being naturally lit later. So we have high hopes, but it's brand new. So.
All right, we'll watch for that one. And lastly on the markets, and I think Steve, you mentioned this landscape market, and I had to is that a thing? Certainly
in Florida they had
Orlando, but there's not a market for that. Tell me about that and what variety.
I call it the 306. I mean, I think that's what it's commonly known as, but it's grown in a 306, transplanted into outdoor beds. That's kind of a thing. Traditionally, Advent was used in that arena. I think that Ranch Red, for the purpose of just being resistant to all the rain and elements, is the other piece that you got to do with that landscape. I'd like for it not to go away and it continue to exist. So
306, that
Advent and Ranch Red
pack, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's cool. That's a cool idea. Rebecca, what would you put in a jumbo 6-pack for landscape use?
Yeah, for me, Advent or Ranch again, just because they do work well in the landscape, early timing to, for longevity in the landscape. If St. Louis was still around, that would really be the true landscape variety that we would expect to, finish over and over, and be a bush in the landscape. But I don't know if anybody has any St. Louis cuttings anymore. So it would have to be Advent or Ranch.
He's got a strange smirk there, like he's been around the
Yeah, I think you could find it. Henrietta Ecke you could find as well. So
I got a plan for those if you do. So
okay, yeah.
All right. And Gary, what would you put in a jumbo 6 for the landscape?
Well, in the pack, Evans, the one that stands as the standard for that product. But I do think that there is interest too. I've talked to a couple of growers, landscape growers, that are trying to see about producing a bigger spec feature plant for landscape purpose as well. So I think that would shift the needle a bit. I do know it kind of got to this pack program because way back in the 80s, we grew at my natural beauty time. We grew 6-inch pots for Disney for the landscape. And it was all a 6-inch pot. It was V10 Amy and a 6-inch pot was the landscape variety. And they wanted it in the ground from, early December. And then we had some extra sitting on the shelf in case somebody stepped on them or maybe, threw up on them or whatever it was that made them ugly. And we had replacements that we grew.
It can certainly be done. So, all right, let's move on to I'm a grower and I want to save money. Who doesn't? Give me an energy efficient variety, probably grow cool variety. What's your best, Steve?
Well, again, Ranch Red, we can drop the temperature at the end pretty substantially. I do. But also Freedom is the traditional plant to drop temperature as well. So I think it's mainly, when you talk about energy efficient, it's cool finish instead of cool grow. But
okay, all right, that's good enough. Rebecca?
So I don't have a favorite variety. I would just, because there's so many to choose from now, I would say whether you're going to cold grow or cold finish, you got to choose an early response time, big bract, and good natural vigor. And, that's your kind of 3 criteria, and then take your pick.
All right. Gary?
Same. There's a lot that work. I don't know about the other breeders, but I do know that we run through a very cold finish screen at one of our locations in Europe. And what we find is that the concept of these, the newer sort of modern version of a early transition late Cyathea work well, typically. You combine that with a large bract.
Yeah.
And that's where you find that happy place. But right now, modern genetics, most modern varieties that have come out of Europe breeding for a while because of the costs has been an issue.
Yeah.
Cool screening, I think, entered into that conversation probably 8 or 9 years ago. So most of the newer varieties have been screened.
That's good to know. So that kind of comes standard. How about no PGRs? Speaking of Europe, where they are being outlawed. Gary, what do you do for a natural compact finish?
Got to go Kayla. Kayla is a beautiful variety that's really naturally compact. It's got a good North American flavor, color, and to me. Yeah, that's
okay.
For that. Low vigor and color presentation and relevant timing. Kayla's really good.
All right, Steve?
Well, I agree with Kayla, but I'd also add Pepita. It stacks up the leaves really tight. We've used it in Europe as well for the same reason. So I would go with those 2 varieties.
All right, Rebecca?
Kayla for sure, just because it's just the natural compactness. But I would also add Viking Pro. You want to choose a variety that doesn't produce a lot of lower laterals too readily and profusely, I guess, because that's where the need for early PGRs come in. So there's very few varieties that really we say you don't need any PGRs at all. But Kayla would certainly work, and then I would say Viking Pro.
I would agree with that comment. Viking Pro, you hear that comment from growers in Europe. Southern Europe that are trying to be hands-off, run it, flexible environments, but they want something that they can run PGR free that's medium vigor, sizes up. Viking Pro fits that bill. So.
All right. High density production. Squeeze more on a bench, make a few more dollars out of each bay. Gary, what do you like?
Our winner and our top seller is Christmas Eve. It's really everything about that variety is about getting you the size spec that you need. It will give you the height you want, but to grow it as tight as you need it to grow. So it's and again the fast rooting, mobility, that high density speaks for efficiency and saving money. So you kind of bundle the entire conversation into one thing: mechanical parts of it, temperature parts of it, density parts of it. All of that has to be in part of the conversation.
All right, Rebecca.
Mirage and Ferrara are the 2 that I generally recommend, just because they have the vigor, that you're generally growing on a reduced production schedule. So they've got good vigor, and they just tend to not, there's some varieties that'll take all the space you can give it, and they get their elbows out and they use all the space. But those are 2 that, you don't get like a stovepipey look when you grow them too tight, right? But they just have like a nice kind of moderate upright bract and look under that high density production.
All right. How about you, Steve?
What is the perfect V, Rebecca? What is the perfect V?
Oh.
We had that conversation lately.
it depends on that depends on the market, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
depends on, what I think is wide is definitely not what some markets think is a wide
Well, then
branch
you grow
angle.
straight ups.
Right.
Yeah.
And ask more money for it.
Yeah.
Steve? High density.
Well, it depends on the pot size for me a little bit because found out you can even grow high density in a tub. If you use Ferrara or you use Ranch Red, it's incredible how they're just grow to the needs of that plant. But then if you go into a 6, the upright habits still stick out to my mind where we're going as breeders and as an industry. Certainly the upright and probably Gary, your bell could be
Yeah.
considered as well, I would think.
Oh yeah.
But
we have a lot that's going in that direction. And again, our conversation is how tight an angle do we tolerate? Yeah. Branch angle versus bract size. Too steep an angle, too big a bracts, they compete. What's the right size to sleeve? What's the best for density production? It's just it's one of the new key criteria you have to have.
There's got to be a perfect ratio in there somewhere.
You could. We figured out. I mean, Ranch Red, we can bring all the way down to a 14 by 14 on a 6-inch pot. We know that we can also stick on week 31, 32, and still make it. All those add into what you can do in high density. So this is a world worth exploring for the large grower for sure.
It's a necessity. It is not it's reality, and the margins are thin. And if you're going to grow 1 million poinsettias, you're going to have to grow that 1 million poinsettias to 2 things: as efficiently per square foot as you have, and at a high yield as possible. Otherwise, you're going to lose your shirt. And the stakes are really high these days.
Sure.
Interest rates high. Growers cannot miss.
Right.
They can't
You get one chance a year to get your poinsettias right.
Yeah.
I struggled with whiteflies down here. This was pre-imidacloprid. We were even putting Temic out back in the good old days. Recall that? Is there such a thing as a whitefly resistant poinsettia yet, or one that's less prone to get them than others?
So I'm the one that wrote that idea down for the group. We do know that the interspecifics or the euphorbia types, so like Poinsettias, Jadors, because of the wild poinsettia that's bred in, do tend to show more tolerance. Resistance is probably not a good word. Tolerance is a better word. And then, we know that whiteflies like white poinsettias, so they're always going to cling to something like White Star before they do a red variety, a dark leaf variety. So, there's levels of tolerance. Is there an actual resistant whitefly poinsettia? I think that's a pretty big ask.
I think you're probably right.
Yep.
All right, let's move last category under. I'm not going to give everybody a chance because I know we don't have it out there. We're just all dreaming.
I think we all think the same thing.
For saving money, longest shelf life. Going to hold that Cyathea right up to Valentine's Day. Rebecca?
Oh gosh, I have a friend that just threw away his Superba New Glitter, and it did still look beautiful. And I said, I don't care what it looks like, throw it away. It's time to move on to other spring crops and other potted floral crops to decorate your office. But for me, Superba New Glitter has like amazing shelf life.
All right, cool. Steve?
Well, there's a big issue that's been around for a long time because really the shelf life at retail, if you really measure it, it's not very many days, but we're doing a better job of doing other stuff, not putting in boxes and stacking and stuff like that. That really helps the shelf life. But we know winter rose, okay? That is the standard to hit. I would say winter rose.
Yeah.
All right. Gary?
Yeah, you can't argue. You can't argue with the winter rose type or any of those type of varieties are very long living. One of the interesting things about them, and you don't quite understand why, but it's something we're doing a lot of work with, is Cyathea retention. Is a lot of early Cyathea will drop, but and now with a lot of our new breeding, the goal is to not drop Cyathea. What I think the key thing here is shelf life. Yeah, I mean, if you're gonna pick the one that ticks the boxes through our entire shelf life trial. It's going to be Christmas bells, but the bottom line is many of them check the boxes very well. The thing that I would say, the attribute that I think has the best opportunity with a modern poinsettia to increase shelf life is root health, genetic root health, and then production root health, because the primary reason that poinsettias will die in the hands of the consumer is overwatering in a pot cover or cycling too dry, too wet. So if you have a stronger root, that's going to give shelf life. To me, it's not so much a genetic of the Scythia or equation. It's how good is that root system and how long is it going to last in that pot cover.
Yeah, and how well it was grown. It's really about how well it was grown.
Oh, yeah. What medium you grow in is a big part of that. I don't want to get into that conversation.
All right. Well, let's use that as a segue, Gary. Let's use that as a segue to best rooting poinsettia.
Oh, yeah, we got that.
You want me to start with that?
Start it up. What single variety roots better
Christmas
than
Eve,
any of them?
bar none. 18 days rooted out, liners out the door in 21 days.
Which one?
Like clockwork, year after year after year after year. Clockwork.
Which variety?
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve.
If they all rooted like Christmas Eve, I'd be in heaven.
Steve?
Put it that way.
Well, again, through studies that have been extensive, I would say it's not red, but your best rooting is Polly's pink. So traditionally, kind of interesting, but we have a lot of good choices now, which is amazing. But the very best, I think, was Polly's pink.
Polly's pink's the standard for you. All right, Rebecca, what's your standard when it comes to the best rooting poinsettia?
Eve really is one of the earliest that you see, and Polly's pink. I actually had kind of forgotten about how quickly Polly's pink can root, but I would also say that's such a variable, depending on the type of crop propagator and how much mist they're using, the density that they're propagating at. There's so many factors that play into that, that it's almost easier to answer which ones we know are really late compared to the early ones.
Right. I think the more relevant question would be which ones give us less problem in transit.
Yeah.
That's where your issues in propagation are not that it takes 3 more days to root. It's that, a third of them rotted in the bag.
Yeah.
That is your problem.
Or sensitivity to leaf yellowing, or, there's lots of different factors that play into that.
A strong, vigorous root system would help counter that, but not necessarily.
It's about getting the root out.
Yeah.
It's about that magic moment when the poinsettia doesn't have a clue, it doesn't have a stem underneath it anymore. And how well does it do that? How does it think that through? I'm personifying a poinsettia for you, but it's thinking I don't have roots, and different varieties understand that different ways and different timings. And so a variety that heals itself faster will transition into callus and throw root faster.
Okay, we're going to get in. I know the folks listening are going, colors, talk colors, talk colors. I got one more sort of cultural issue, and that is, what is the strongest poinsettia out there, the one that survives the drop test every time? Because we've all been in greenhouses and seen the broken bracts left after you've pulled the bay, So, Steve.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I lived through the drop test. That's what brought on Prestige after Freedom and made a huge market for Prestige. But certainly today's drop test is I joke around that it's turned into what poinsettia can you turn upside down and it still survives. And that would be Ranch Red.
After UPS has had a hold of it, Peter?
Yeah, right.
All right, Rebecca?
Oh, gosh. I mean, we have to talk about Prestige when we talk about strong branching. Excuse me. It's still one of the standards when we talk about V-shape architecture, the drop test. There's still just nothing quite like it.
All right, Gary, you're nodding.
Yeah, Prestige has been something we've been pursuing for a very long time. We can attack it at the regional fringes where it runs out of juice when you go north and it doesn't always reliably bract up. And then we push it south where it can heat delay. But in what I call the Prestige belt, that's really hard to surpass. We have a new variety. I'm not ready to stand up and down and scream its magic, but we did this with Amy at her greenhouse a couple of years ago. She wasn't particularly happy with
Not Amy the poinsettia, Amy Morris at Hymo.
Amy Morris.
which
and high
Amy,
mows.
Amy was not named after, much to her chagrin. But
Yeah.
I hate to
Yeah.
break it to her.
But doing a drop test on the variety Christmas candle and literally testing her patience with how high was rising it up. Dropped it 3 times from waste and split the pot in half, and the plant didn't break. So right now, I mean, I can't speak to how great the variety is going to be in the end, but when it comes to stem strength, that sucker's a tank.